Now we have an expert that we're going to talk to about what's happening here on the ground in Cleveland. Her name is Natalie Fry. She's a veteran matchmaker with It's Just Lunch, focusing primarily on Cleveland. She's got a really straightforward approach to making matches, really trying to help people find what they are looking for in a partner. And it's set her up as a leader in the dating field in that way. And we are very happy to have her with us now on the Three Things to Know podcast. So let's not waste any more time. Not that we were wasting time. Obviously, this is important information, but let's get right to it and let's bring Natalie in right now. Natalie, thank you so much for being here on the
Hello.
Three Things to Know podcast.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
So excited to talk to you about this. You know, so many people very interested in, the dating world at all times of year, but we are coming up on Valentine's Day. So as we're looking ahead at this sometimes very pressure-filled holiday, I kind of want to get just a sense from you working in this space. What's the dating world look like out there right now in the matchmaking space? Who, what, where? What are we looking at out there?
Dating world looks good. I'm loving this time of dating for our clients. It's Just Lunch especially, we always work with more serious, relationship-minded types of people. But I think coming out of the P word pandemic, we are seeing even more the values that our clients have coming into it, and their mindset is more open-minded. And it's just so much more fun when you keep an open mind in dating. You have a better time and see more success overall.
Well, that is interesting to hear that people are definitely, open, sounds like they're looking for love. I want to talk a little bit about the kind of situations that people are looking for that you're seeing. A lot of times when we think about dating, we think of that sort of, traditional, for lack of a better word, monogamous one-on-one pairing. But what's out there? What are people looking for?
Well, that's what I'm seeing for the most part. But what my clients are seeing, what they're coming from, sometimes is a little different. With today's dating culture, there's so many different avenues to go about meeting people. I mean, you've got your basic meet-up groups where you can't even determine if someone is looking for a relationship. And then you have, of course, your dating apps, your dating sites, your freebies, and then your paid memberships platforms. So it really depends. It depends on the person, but overall, the trend and why our clients come to us is so that they can meet singles who have the same end goals, a little bit more serious. Sometimes with the online, you can run into that lack of consistency with people really wanting that, or if they say they want it, maybe it's not so true after all. So our clients definitely want to level it up a bit.
Okay. And just so we can get a good framework of what we're talking about here, primarily with your matchmaking clients, are you dealing with one-on-one monogamous partnerships? Do you do anything with like polyamorous situations or anything like that?
No. So at It's Just Lunch, it is monogamous. Occasionally we'll have people reach out and I direct them to a separate division of our service that's more kind of going out on their behalf, more of a recruitment based type of matchmaking. But at It's Just Lunch, all of our clients are in our database, for lack of a better term, and all looking for that monogamous, committed one-on-one relationship. Yeah.
Okay. And then geographically speaking, you are concentrated, at least for the most part, primarily in Cleveland. Is that right?
That's correct. Yep. We do. We have a couple cities within our franchise, but my main home base, the clientele I support, is Cleveland, is a main one for me.
Okay, so now we've got that down. We got the parameters. We know the who, we know the what, we know the where.
There's a lot to it.
Yeah, there really is. You gotta figure out these things at the top. Now let's talk about some bad dating habits. We gotta know what we gotta stop doing before we can learn what we gotta doing, right? Any big major ones that are jumping out at you that people need to just get rid of this year?
There's a few top of mind, Stephanie, let me tell you. Yeah. I mean, we've got the classic political talk. I mean, we it's okay to have opinions, but when it becomes really charged and intense on a first date, it's best to go into the purpose of a first date is to get to know someone, their hobbies, their interests, keep it light, their values, things like that, how they live their day-to-day life. So I typically encourage not for the first date that the political talk. We also see at It's Just Lunch with our clients. Again, like I said, it's funny because I encourage that open mindset. That's one of the main things that I set my clients up to be successful, is that open-mindedness. But oftentimes they're coming to a matchmaker because they do have specific things that they're looking for, which sometimes can be a bit too picky. So we want to take a look at that. I think for clients, if they've been single for some time and have put time and effort into dating and they're still finding themselves single, that's usually the main ticker, is that they're just a little too picky and we need to open it up a bit.
Okay, all right. And we mentioned some of the other things too. Some of the things, with maybe the app-based stuff, people can maybe be just like swiping out of boredom. I guess sort of the flip side of that would be having too many options and not wanting to, I guess, not settle down, but hone in.
Right.
I think is a better term. I would use.
Yeah, well, you might almost feel like paralyzed with all of the options you have if you are on the flip side, getting all of these hits and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know who I should even chat with, or who do I swipe right on and who do I swipe left on? It can be a mess. So I definitely sympathize with our clients. It's a different challenge, right? From whereas not getting any matches, that's tough too. They're just a different set of problems. But overall, the best way to determine if there's a connection is face to face in front of someone who has the same general end goals.
Something else too that comes up in conversations with my friends who are in the dating space is pretending a little bit to maybe be someone that you're not. And when I say that, I say also often when I'm hearing people talk about, dating issues, so people are so focused on whether someone likes them and not necessarily on whether you like the person. And we forget, because rejection sucks. We forget that it's really important that you like them too.
So true. I think once you get out of that mindset is when you really start to see success in dating, because what that's actually stemming from, to get a little deep here, do you like you? Do you like you? Because if you're focused on does he like me or does she like me, we're losing sight of like you. Where are you in the picture with that dynamic? So, and so when we really start to just be content with who we are, what we're bringing to the table, a strong sense of self, we don't need to pretend to be anybody that we're not.
There's this one quote that I want to share, and I don't know who said it, so somebody Google it. Someone who's listening or watching, Google it and let me know. But the quote is, "How bold one gets when we are sure of being loved." And I think back across my life and I think about, wow, when I really felt loved, I felt like those were the time I was comfortable taking the most chances and doing the things that were most challenging and whatever, and being my most authentic self. And it's like, man, what if we could just flip that to how when we are sure of being loved by ourselves? Game changer.
Absolutely. I love that. Like kids, when they've got their parents' love and support, they take all the chances in the world. They don't question any move, right? They're total risk takers. So I think that's great. And we always have the self-love. It's something we can work on and we have total control over. It's not easy, but that's really huge before you should start dating. And I think, like you said, that's going to be a major sign if you're looking, not within, if you're looking outward, that, hey, maybe we got to do some inner work before we go out there. Yeah.
Right. Oh, I love the direction this conversation is taking. Okay. So you got to love yourself. You got to have that great relationship with yourself. And so to your point of what you were talking about, encouraging people to be open-minded, a lot of times people will get hung up on the so-called deal breakers, which would potentially, be the opposite of being open-minded. So what are some of the most common deal breakers that you're seeing for men and women?
So, overall for the men, there's going to be shared deal breakers between the two genders for sure. But what I tend to find, men are, what we all know, we all hear it, are more physically, they think in the physical world. They're able to grasp that. And so appearance is a big thing for them. It's a big thing for women too, but overall, mainly that's what I hear from our male clientele is if their date shows up and maybe didn't seem like she put a lot of effort into her physical appearance, maybe looks a bit tired from the workday, a bit disheveled, that's going to be a deal breaker for sure. From a first date perspective, you want someone to come in and put time and energy into their appearance and take pride in that. For our women, it's usually the quality of the conversation I find is more so the deal breaker feedback. So I'll get terms like it was a bit, he seemed lazy or lacking ambition. Yes, that could have to do with his work and his life, but it's also what was he contributing in the conversation, right? What's the overall energy he's giving off? So those are different deal breakers, but between both, kind of what ends up being pretty alike in the two is independence. They do not want someone who's super needy, coming across as needy in the date. Again, having that strong sense of self and knowing who you are is key.
To your point about the physical deal breaker for men, I often say, it's the looks that get you there, but it's everything else that keeps you there. Mm-hmm. That's definitely a consideration. It is, right. You want someone that you are physically drawn to for sure. So I can see that. And then what you were saying about the women who tend to be more focused on the conversation. Geez, I mean, have you ever been on a date where the person didn't ask you a single question about yourself?
Right. I'm like, well, that was fun talking to myself the whole time. I could have stayed home.
A good exercise in listening, right? We can all practice our listening skills.
Yeah.
But I think that makes a lot of sense. Obviously those do sound like two different forms to me. What I'm hearing is effort. Mm-hmm. Want to see some effort put in. Are there any deal breakers that we should just throw out entirely in your experience, whether that's coming from men or women?
Oh my gosh. Well, it all goes back to the pickiness or that very particular type. And with that, there's going to be some pretty heavy expectations around that, because if you have this image of who your date should be before you even meet them, I mean, you're destined to be disappointed. No one can be perfect. I mean, so definitely throw out those unrealistic expectations, especially when it comes to a first date. So expecting someone to just, sparks flying all across the restaurant. We want a connection, yes, but this isn't a fairy tale movie. So this is real human, interaction, and we're trying to determine if we want to see this person again at the very least. So, kind of after that date, we want to leave throw out the desire for them to woo you, sweep you off your feet, put in all of this heavy effort to show you interest, because they've got their own life too, and we're still in the dating phase. So it all goes back to that independence too, being confident and happy with who you are as a single person, because then some of that just the constant need for approval kind of dwindles a bit.
Yeah, that idea of perfection. I think Disney movies, right?
Yeah.
They just did us all in with this big romantic picture right out of the gate. And the perfection thing, I mean, how exhausting would that be if everyone were perfect? And to have to be perfect all the time.
Right? Just not possible. And dating's a lot more fun when you let that go. So it's not easy though, because like you said, those Disney movies, they really set us up. My goodness.
We did. We got those expectations dancing around in there. All right. Now, so when we think about deal breakers, though, there are maybe, sometimes it's a guard up, it's other reasons or whatever. Sometimes it's an experience that you've learned throughout the past. I definitely don't want this in my life. Are there any deal breakers that you have your clients come to you with that you think, okay, yeah, we should keep those? Those are solid deal breakers, actually.
Well, and a lot of this is based off of personal experience, right? So it's not necessarily going to be, if it's her deal breaker, it might not be his deal breaker, but everyone has a different style of communication too, and what they kind of need in a relationship. So I would say in any inconsistency, what you deem as necessary in communication style, or just poor communication in general, it is a red flag, and should be a deal breaker, most definitely. So that could be, let's say, it's also just really not fair. Like that's really tough. If someone's giving you wishy-washy feelings, they're really present and seem interested in exploring what you've got one week, and then the next week they're a ghost, then that's not fair. And I would have a conversation about it. There's ways to have that conversation where it's not, crazy. I hate that word, but that comes up sometimes, especially early on in dating. You're allowed to have those conversations, because if it's not the right person, we're just on to the next. That's okay. But again, if it turns out that they're not picking up what you're putting down, that's a deal breaker. It's not going to work long term, and you shouldn't have to settle or sacrifice your needs, communication, or needs in any other way for someone. So
there are so many great things that you said right there that I want to highlight super quickly. The communication thing. We actually did a whole podcast several months ago on the 5 love languages with the author of the book about the 5 love languages, and that being able, not even like sharing the same love language necessarily, because that can be fun if you're coming at it with 2 different love languages, but at least being able to communicate that. And if you can't communicate that, that would be hard.
That is very difficult, for sure. Yeah, the love languages, they can be different, and that actually can be nice, complements each other quite nicely, right?
Sure. All right, well, let's talk about a shift in thinking, and this is kind of something that I think I think that it seems to be part of your matchmaking philosophy, is switching from thinking of the deal breaker to the deal maker. So
I love this term, Stephanie. I've never used it before, deal maker. And I love it. I'm going to start rolling with it. I mean, obviously this term, I didn't have a word for it, but 100%, this is so what I push our clients. So I'm always saying I want to come from an abundance mindset, not a scarcity mindset, which these deal breakers, like we talked about, there are some that are okay, but for the most part, I think we can get stuck on the negatives. So really the deal maker is shifting to look at things more positively. Trying to have a fresh perspective. I think just sitting back and being curious and open-minded about your date and the types of people that you're putting yourself in front of, that is just super helpful to give you more opportunities. So we want to shift that into making those deals, not breaking them.
Sure. Oh man, when you said that, coming from a place of abundance versus a place of scarcity, that really resonated with me, because something that I really try to keep in mind when I'm doing anything, and this is not just in the dating world, but in the life world, is thinking about how I hope I make my decisions out of hope and not out of fear. Because when you're making a decision out of fear, that's just never worked out for me personally very well.
It's a good point. And with dating, there is so much fear, because you're putting yourself out there in such a vulnerable way. So I bet underneath it all, if we were to get real honest with ourselves, some of that deal breaking is probably coming from fear of rejection or fear of being hurt. Yeah, I'm onto something.
Yes. I am totally picking up what you were putting down in this situation. Absolutely. So let's just throw out some things that might be deal makers. Some things, is the person close to their family, if family is important to you? How do they react if they're stressed? How do they react if they are upset? How do they react when you're upset? Are they loving? Are they generous? These are just some things that come to mind.
Those are great
when I think of deal
makers.
makers.
Those are great. And, your deal makers could be totally different from somebody else's deal makers too. And this does come from putting yourself out there and having some dating history under your belt. I think typically you're going to be able to figure that out more with experience. But I think those are great ones, those deal makers. It's more like you're kind of just searching for the positives. It's so much easier to find negatives. It's kind of how the human brain is wired anyway. It's like survival instinct, right? We just seek, it sounds terrible, but that is how it is. We want to avoid danger at all costs. So this is kind of just rewiring your brain and training your brain to try to see the good and the positives that someone else is bringing to the table.
Oh, yeah. Geez, now that you say that too, I'm thinking when you're in a relationship, it's so easy to have the negative things
Oh,
stick
yeah.
out in your mind. But then for some reason, when you get out of that relationship, it's like
Oh
everything's been
man.
washed over with rose colored glasses. You're like, oh, I only remember
Oh
the good things.
yeah.
Like,
That's a good point. Isn't it interesting how that works out? For sure. Yeah.
yes. Oh man. Well, I think we've got a lot of great tips here how people can really kind of take control of their dating life in 2022 coming up on that very expectation-filled Valentine's Day. So if we're going to take Natalie's advice here, maybe let's throw those expectations out the window, you know, find somebody that you maybe vibe with, find someone who makes you curious. Natalie, do you have any parting words for people who are single and how they can really kind of make the most of serving their best selves in 2022?
Oh man, just really, I think it's great to, before you go on a date, kind of just envision and put out that energy of how you want to be your best self, what you want that person to feel like, look like, be like, and then just go into it with openness and curiosity. You're going to get a lot more out of it that way than if you're closed off and have those walls all the way up. So that would be my advice for 2022. I mean, fingers crossed, we're going to see some major normalcy coming back this year. So lots of dating, lots of face-to-face opportunities with singles who are ready to meet that person. So I'm feeling a lot of relationships coming out of this year, and I'm feeling like they're going to be legit, strong foundations, good connections, long lasting. So that's what I'm putting out there, Stephanie. Whether they want to take it or not is up to them.
I love it. We are looking at 2022. We are optimistic. We are being open. We are loving ourselves. And we're seeing what happens. Natalie, thank you so much for this great advice for people who are in the dating space. I appreciate your time here on the Three Things to
Thanks,
Know
Stephanie. It was
podcast.
a lot of fun.